Thank you all for joining Sanctuary Sessions. We started Sanctuary Sessions when COVID-19 became a universal force that we all had to contend with once the government started issuing universal stay-at-home orders. We realized that there were many posts going out into the world of what we could do, but there wasn't a lot about how we could heal together and could we join together to have a collective healing. So we started with Alice Berry and Rhonda Wheatley, and now we are working with Dana Major. And Dana, we're blessed to be working with Dana to navigate us through COVID. And the last time we were with Dana, she did a crystal seeing, which only she has the unique power from coming from a line of seers and a unique approach to art and light that can create a kind of meaning through looking into light and looking through crystals to see ourselves in the world that we're finding ourselves in.
Called scrying, S-C-R-Y-I-N-G.
Right, that's what Dana is a master in.
Cool, very cool.
And so with that, Dana and I, some of you signed up for the last one, and so you may have noticed we've switched it a little to respond to the recent changes in COVID and the recent changes or the recent responses to what has been altogether happening far too regularly over not just the last week, but the last, since the founding of America. And so Dana and I are happy that you're all with us to really look at some things that we may not have been seeing, or to draw attention to ways of seeing in other ways of seeing things that we haven't seen. So with that, I again welcome you all and want to turn it over to Dana.
Thanks, Tricia, and thanks everybody who's here with us on this Zoom Live, and I think Tricia is recording. And I'm really grateful that you're all here, and for me, and probably for everybody, it's a somber time, a time of reflection, a time of uncertainty, just in the events of the last week. And, that emerges out of a long period of collective uncertainty. And as we all are thinking, what can I do? How can I help? Crystal seeing is what I do with others, what I do with myself, as a way to tune my energy, put my mind in a state where I'm able to come up with productive ideas, and I'm able to accept a sense of peace no matter what the surroundings are. And from that position, I'm able to decide in mindful ways how I want to take action, what I want to do, what is my contribution. So I know that people have a whole array of feelings going on right now that might be new or might be uncomfortable, and we all are. So here we are. I think it's important that we just show up, put one foot in front of the next and show up. Briefly, I'll introduce myself, and then I'd love if folks could give a brief introduction of themselves, either anonymously or using your name. And
Everyone here, Dana? I think we might be having, I think we lost her. So let me,
Yeah, my screen just totally froze, and there was no, she was just like
I'm back.
frozen.
oh, you're back.
Are people back now?
I think it was you, you zipped it into the crystal ether.
I had to pick another Wi-Fi channel, a more reliable Wi-Fi channel. I apologize. But technology does have an input, doesn't it? And that's part of what's working and how we're gathering today. So I come from a Kentucky family with a history of people who work with other people's energies in different kinds of ways. And I see your inner light. I use quartz crystals to enhance that energy for me, which honestly, I don't know whether that's simply a creative boost in the way that favorite music is, or whether there is some sort of energy acceleration going on. And it doesn't matter to me, because when I get around the quartz and the amethyst and the other stones that I work with, somehow I am able to do the seeings. And normally in a person-to-person situation, a participant such as yourself would come and we would sit in person, and I would do what I do, look into the crystal and say what I see. And I would be the one who is seeing, and you would be the one who is listening to what I have seen. Something that's very different now in online seeings is that I am using not the view of my stone itself, but instead, as I'm showing you the quartz crystal ball and moving it, which I'll be doing at length when we get to it, I'm looking at the image on the screen and doing my seeing from the image on the screen, which is the same image that you are seeing. And Trisha, in your introduction, which was lovely and accurate, and I wish I had it all typed out so I could just spit it out when I needed to, thank you. You said the word unique, and that I had a unique perspective or a unique method. And indeed, the fact that I've honed my energy work intentionally for years is probably unique, because people do different things with their lives. But it's so important for me to carry the message out to you, out to everybody, that what I am doing is not in the least bit unique to me. I don't have any kind of power or wisdom or connection to the Great Spirit or anything beyond what every single individual has. It is simply a matter of I have paid attention and I have honed it in the same way that if I were a physical athlete and I had spent 30 years toning my body and doing endurance things, that would show too. But I'd like to hear, if I could please, briefly from each of you, who you are, and just tell us anything that's on your mind, a thought, a question, a feeling. Trisha, you want to start? Oh, I think you're muted.
Sorry. I am Trisha Van Eck. I run with many people, 6018 North, and the thought on my mind is the inability or the lack of articulation. And thank you for doing this.
Thanks.
I'm going to call on someone else then. Someone who is by the name of iPhone. Oh, I think that's Beth, and we can't hear you.
She's muted.
Okay, now we can. I don't think we can hear you. We'll maybe you can type in the chat. Please type in your name and a word. We'll go to Kristen.
Hi, my name's Kristen, and I guess the feeling that I'm feeling right now is unfocused.
And can you choose someone else?
Oh, sure. Could Sonia go next, please?
Happy to. I'm an astrologer, and I think that welcome to the Aquarian age. I think this is like an initiation into the Aquarian age. You know, it's global. Some of us will get through it, but you know, we have to learn new ways of interacting, of forming relationships, and you know, just this, you know, solitary time is what, you know, we're sensing our own individuality, and well, that's why I'm yeah, I think it's very cool. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you.
How about Roman Susan? Susan Roman?
Oh, that was me. My name is
Oh.
Kristen, but my
Oh.
organization is called Roman Susan.
Oh.
Thank you.
Winnie introduced on chat. Winnie says, hi, I am Winnie and my word, self-care. And we have somebody with the letter W. Does W want to introduce self? Oh, that's you, Winnie. Hello. And I can see iPhone participant still unfortunately muted. Trisha, do you have any?
It's unmuted. I think iPhone. Are you Beth Bradfish? I think we're having difficulties with iPhone.
Okay.
It seems like maybe Winnie is iPhone and they're trying to log in with a different device to get the audio to work.
No, they're separate people. But
well, we can go ahead and welcome to those of us who can speak and those of us who cannot speak despite the effort. And I think that that is an energy that's going around. And for me, the word, my word that I would put in is shift, S-H-I-F-T. And how shifts are working all of the time to create the new, and how we have some agency over the shifts that happen, sometimes a lot and sometimes a little, and shifts that I need to take inside of myself personally. So while we all probably have similar questions running through our minds on social issues and political issues, I won't in this workshop or any other workshop, because it's not my topic, be discussing specifics. I don't know what you should do. At the moment, I don't exactly know what I should do either. And so together, we're going to walk through a crystal seeing as a way of collectively focusing. Someone, I think it was Kristen, said having trouble with focus, and indeed. And one of my other experiences with the quartz is that quartz is a component in radio technology to bring the signal into the device. So there might be some sort of focusing ability. It certainly acts as a lens. I want to focus my energies with this word shift, and you can use your word or my word or no word, to look inside and to see, where do I need to shift? What shift am I going through right now? And to let take over my thoughts for the meditation period, the same intuition that is the crystal seeing. And in my opinion, is the use of other divining tools, like ones that don't tell a story, like tea leaves and reading smoke, and some that do tell a story, like tarot cards. Whether or not the tool that we use tells a story, we are always using our intuition to find the meaning in it. And so with that intuition, that intuitive higher mind, will go together, each of us on two journeys, a personal journey and a collective journey, just as we are when we're outside of a meditation. And I will let the crystals sort my thoughts and energies. And then when I'm thinking and when I'm writing, I'll trust the ideas that come to me to turn into action, whatever action I need to take, where I would be valuable. I think about shifts in perception. Sometimes a miracle is defined as a shift in perception. If I think about stones, natural formations of stones have facets. And from this angle, I can see certain things about this stone. And even if I spend 150 years looking at the stone from this angle, when I turn it to this angle, I see something different. That has always been true about the stone and for the stone. So I think about how my ideas are formed that way as well. I want to start by bringing us all into a meditation together using the tone crystal bowls. I'm going to put the crystal up in front of the lens, and I invite you to get comfortable. Treat the next few minutes as a meditation. I'll be looking at the image of the crystal on the screen, and I welcome you to do the same thing. And also, if you have your own divining tools of any sort, you can get them handy to you now. We'll do a meditation. I will do a seeing where I say what I see in it. And then we'll open it up and have a discussion. It's just an optional, you can reflect on what your experience was. And in the course of the discussion, I have some other divining tools here just from my personal life. I've got other stones and metals that I use, and I've got my set of tarot cards, and we'll use those tools if it seems appropriate in our discussion time. So settle in. I'm going to put the crystal in front of the lens and bring us into a meditation where we'll sit quietly for a minute, and then I will begin speaking. I see in the crystal the process of gathering. And I see that at first, when we gather objects or gather as people, the effect seems insignificant, just a few things, just a few folks. And at this time, the accumulation has reached a critical mass where it has its own body, it has its own voice. And as collections of people's memories, collections of objects, collections of hopes, everyone brings these to every community. And these energies, these hopes, the energy of mankind, the aspiration, the movement of spirit and the breath, these are pushing up against confinement, pushing up against, or just into, pushing into new space. I see frost as a cold, opaque film in front of the reflection of the window. I see roads coming to dead ends, and I see unmapped, ungridded territory ahead. In myself, I see the fear of my own plans needing to change. I see the fear of not having the right idea. And again, I notice the reflection of the window. And I'm invited by the voice of my intuition to open the window. Open the window and bring flow, bring airflow and light flow into my space. I do not have to know what I am going to do. I only need to know what I am able to give. I see also the fear of unhappiness, the fear of dissatisfaction, and the fear of causing unhappiness and dissatisfaction in others. I see these as the spots that block the light in part of the ball, in the shape of laundry, how it falls in the corner of your room, just collecting there. All of these collections, what have I collected? And I'm reminded by the crystal that happiness is the result of right action, right thinking. I'm reminded also by the crystal that right is not a black and white word. There's not a right thing and a wrong thing that are 100% in most situations. And I am reminded that I don't have to know what's right. I do, however, have to feel. And this is another message from the crystal. It is important for me to feel into this situation, feel other people as individuals. The crystal shows me in the form of, I'm looking at the little rainbowy sort of oil slick spot in the upper left quadrant of the image, shows me the remarkable individuality of myself and of every other participant, every other individual in the different communities that I live in and work in. And it is important for me to feel individuals as individuals, and it is also important for me to feel what's going on in the world among people, and not just understand it or have an opinion about it, but simply to feel it. And the crystal reminds me that when I tune my sense to joy, no matter what I use to tune it, whether it's a meditation and lofty thoughts about the meaning of life that bring me peace and joy, or it's a situation comedy or a silly song, or just an activity that I like to do. When I put my mind onto the channel of joy, then as my feelings come through, as I ask my higher self, my higher power, what am I feeling and what am I to do and what can I do? If I have set my mind in a state of joy, the answers are going to come. And the crystal reminds me that when I have moved in the past through difficulty, careful to tune my mind to joy while tending the difficulty as responsibly as I can. Tuning my mind to joy makes me more effective. I'm reminded by the crystal too that time passes and change happens. And when we understand what's going on any day, whether it's a day in 2020 or a day that happened in 2012 or a day 6 years from now, when I understand that this too shall pass, and I understand that every day I create my life, and every day I live in a world created by the lives of others. And I ask myself, just for this one day, who am I? And I act just in this one day. Everything works out over time to bring us resolution in some things and more disruption and more need for change in others. And lastly, the crystal reminds me about love and fear. There's a way of thinking about life that says that there are really only two energies, love and fear. and that what I feel and what I do and what I think can be understood as results of love being generated from a sense of love inside myself, or a sense of fear, and certainly a mix of them in every circumstance. But love or fear are the original energies. And when I understand that fear, like shadow, is simply a lack of love in the way that shadow is simply a lack of light, I know that only the love is real. I know that I can walk forward in love. Let's take a deep breath together. I breathe in through my nose, deeply filling the bottom of my lungs first, and then the middle of my lungs and the top of my lungs. And I exhale, beginning with the bottom and the middle and the top. And slowly I open my eyes. And we're still in a meditative state. Meditation doesn't turn off like a switch. So we can have a discussion here from sort of this meditative state. And I'd like to just open up the video space, and people can give their reflections. We can ask questions. I can use other tools to help us clarify questions. What came to you in the seeing time? And Tricia, I'll let you moderate how this goes. Tricia, if you're speaking, I think we don't hear you.
Sorry.
There you go.
Do people want to chat in the chat, or do they want to say, unmute themselves? I can unmute everyone, I think. I mean, maybe I can't. So maybe whoever wants to say what they heard, or what did you ask to say?
What your experience was. Any thoughts or feelings or questions? Just to continue the discussion, since we're all in this sort of meditative mind together.
No, I've been into rocks for a long. I did lapidary work for a while, and I think that your crystal ball is gorgeous, but it seems to be a combination of rutilated and tourmalated quartz. Is that what it is?
It is. It's got all sorts of different kinds of occlusions.
Yeah, yeah. It's really special.
Well, it works for me like looking at pictures in the clouds. So I just look and let the stories take over in my mind of what I'm seeing, and let my eye take over on what pictures it seems to be drawing.
Yeah, and when the occlusions kind of line up, but when you were turning it, I could see faces forming.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, John Dee had a scryer, Edward Kelly. Well, I sort of understood how you could do scryer, you know, how he contacted with angels and things like that.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, for me, it is called scrying, using stones to see energies or read energies. But before I knew it had a name or even a history, since I had always just sort of done it, other people in my family do things with intuition, but not with stones as far as I'm aware. And I just followed into it intuitively. And for me, I think it's interesting that there is a word, and I actually am not certain whether how a historical scryer would describe his or her practice.
Check out John D.
Okay.
Online, you know, and was his scryer, Edward, well, they had an interesting relationship. You know.
What was your experience, Sonia, during the seeing time when you were looking at the image of the crystal instead of being with the stone in the same room?
Oh, the way she was turning it, I could see if I really got heavily, I could almost make a story of it, because faces would sort of form. And if you hold it at certain positions, you know, there was a face that had, you know, really like limpid dark eyes, and then another one with all the root tiles. It was sort of forming something. Well, it was something you could kind of tune into. Mm-hmm. With all that kind of, so I thought it was an absolutely fascinating stone.
Thanks for the reflection.
You're welcome.
Anybody else want to jump in with what your experience was?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Okay, this is Beth Bradfish, formerly iPhone.
Beth, welcome, for real.
I changed my laptop so I could talk. I just found what you were doing. I looked at the stone. Of course, at that time, I was looking at the screen of my iPhone and I couldn't see it so well, but I trusted what you were saying, and in what you were seeing and reflecting back to us about your experience, I felt was so appropriate for today. You put into some words so much of what I'm feeling, and even very specifically what I'm feeling. I just came back from agreeing to share a workspace for my work with somebody, and it's a very large space.
Oops, did we lose you?
I think we lost her. When she comes back,
okay,
she can continue. In the meantime, I think in response to what Sonia said about the cracks, you had said that the process of gathering and the pushing out against confinement and into new spaces, it seems like the cracks and the fissures are where we can make new spaces, and maybe haven't looked at those cracks as possibilities.
Yeah, I think that really resonates for me too. And to me, the crack is, you know, just the very edge of the shift, but what that's really comprised of is individuals. And what that says to me is, I don't understand how large institutions work. Like, maybe let's just take one called, you know, the Salvation Army. I don't really know how they do things administratively. And so if I were to try to imitate a large institution, I'd probably just get stuck in the mud. But I do know if I were an individual person with a family in the house quarantined, and I were trying to accomplish something socially, there are things I might need, or help or aid that I might need. And if I think about it in terms of how can I help individuals, then I get motivated and feel like it's possible that I really could help.
I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything else. You did this before for COVID, and you had talked about, again, you talked about love and fear then too, because there's similar responses. And you also talked about the individual, but this time you also talked about joy and happiness. And how does one, in situating oneself in a position of joy, in some cases for some people, and at some times, how does one do that? It's almost seems to be overwhelming to find a position of joy.
For sure, Tricia. And it's so important that we do not try and just paint pink paint on people's pain. I mean, I think for me personally, part of the directive here is to really feel the pain that's been going around people in our world for a long, long time, and just go ahead and feel it. And it is really important not to take a Pollyanna attitude. It is equally important to build a foundation for a future that everyone is better off in, on a sense of joy and on a sense of love, of togetherness, of mutual aid. And I know as a maker, when I am making things in the studio, my attitude really, really super does influence what comes out. My mood does, what kind of a frame of mind I'm in, if I'm in a defensive frame of mind or a joyful frame of mind. These things make a difference in what I make materially in the studio. I know that my mindset makes a difference in my human interactions. If I go into a conversation with someone, even if I try really hard to hide it, but I'm not in a great mood, it will color the conversation for me. And similarly, I know that what my energy is when I move into a collective effort will influence how that goes. And so to that end, I think it's important that those of us who do have the spare energy, space, and time in the mind to tune our minds to joy, it is important to make that base for everybody, so that, you know, as a collective, we do have some resources of joy. And it's as simple as, and by the way, joy does not mean glee. And it doesn't mean an assessment that everything's okay. And it's not even picking out what's okay in the, you know, soup of all the things that are not okay. Joy for me is a deeper feeling of a confidence or faith in the processes that people move through, and the processes that divine energy moves our world with and moves us with. Faith that things will get better, things will change, I will get better, I will change, my fellows will get better, my fellows will change. Faith that this is a process that is worth engaging. And that's joy to me, not a gleeful feeling of celebration. That'd be a different word. But to get the mind into joy, fortunately, because most of us aren't sitting around all the time in a nearly ecstatic state of bliss, it's really as easy as thinking about things that bring me joy, favorite relatives, favorite pets, favorite activities, or listening to music that puts me in a happy frame of mind, or watching something on the TV that makes me laugh, even if it's a artificial canned laughter. It kind of gets the juices flowing, right? In the way that it doesn't matter how you warm up before a workout, as long as you're warm when you get there. Every day I feel that I owe it to myself and also to the world around me to put my mind into a state of joy. So I'm bringing that into the world. And, you know, I fail at it left and right all the time, 1,000 times a day. And most people do. And that's just the way it goes. We get back up in tune again.
Thank you.
Thanks. Would anyone else like to hop in, or would anybody, I have tarot cards here. If anybody has a specific question, I wouldn't mind doing the experiment on digital technology of pulling a card to respond to a question someone might have.
Yeah, Dana, Winnie had asked, what other tools do you use? Kristen, do you have a question? Or did you? Sorry.
So in my own world, I meditate with my crystals, and I use these tarot cards, and I I did not study tarot. I do not know much about the history of tarot. I don't come to the cards as somebody who is using the tools the way that they have traditionally been used. I come to them because I'm energetically drawn to them, and I let what I see in the images or what I might know about the images play around in my mind for another intuitive seeing. But I use these cards. These are the Aleister Crowley tarot cards. I know Aleister Crowley has got a deck that it's a beautiful set of cards. I do know that people who read the Aleister Crowley deck say that it doesn't matter if they're upside down or right side up the way that it does with other decks. So if someone wanted to pose a question for us all or for yourself to the cards, I can draw a card and we can look into what gets suggested. Trisha, should I hot potato you?
Sure. I have a question of what to do now,
What to do now?
or just what to,
Go ahead.
or just what to do.
What to do? So I'm inspired in my technique by Rhonda Wheatley, who maybe everybody knows, but Rhonda is she's a seer, a tarot card reader, an artist, fantastic energy worker, also a friend. And Rhonda reads cards for other people as a matter of course. And and I talked with her about how she was doing this digitally, since a person can't draw their own card from across the screen. And she says she meditates through it and lets it just happen. So I'm going to do the same thing. Trisha, your question is, and maybe I can. Your question is what to do or what can I do?
What to do.
What to do. I use my left hand. I think it's more sensitive. And the left side is for energies coming in. And when I choose the cards for myself, I run my hand over, and the one to choose is the one that seems to be making an energetic peak in the field over the cards. So Trisha, interesting. The card is the 10 of Swords, Ruin. So before one must know about these cards and every other divining device that it is so important not to latch on to a bunch of fearful old ideas about what words mean or what images mean, and to just breathe with them and think about how they might be a fit. So let's look at, then I use this book that talks about what each card means. 10 of Swords, Ruin. Keywords: Sun and Moon in Gemini, fear of insanity, broken heart, fear of the destructive energy of accumulated anger, negative thinking. 9 of Swords direct their superior aggressive forces from all directions at once against a 10th and destroy it completely. This 10th sword bears the symbols of the sun and the heart. This card shows the destructive power. If I can get it on screen there. This card shows the destructive power of constant negative thinking. It is an image of insanity, a confused uproar of soulless mechanisms. Even the last remains of joy of life in the sun love for yourself and others, as well as existence, the heart, threaten to fall prey to this negativity. Negativity disrupts and destroys the soul's striving toward harmony and balance. The situation is also a threat to your external conditions. This may make financial ruin or the loss of other meaningful possessions or possible needs. Now I need to turn the page here. Indications. The first step is to recognize your fear of insanity and ruin. The second step is to understand the negative energy which lies hidden behind your fear. If you want to, you can vanquish this fear by recognizing it. Questions. What are your greatest fears? How would the total destruction of your life look? Suggestion. Once you have recognized in what areas your fears lie, formulate your own specific affirmations using only positive terms to help you reprogram yourself. Affirmation. I invite the positive into my life and welcome it wholeheartedly. So Tricia, that's a really interesting card that we drew at this time. I heard in it it's almost an eerie depiction of what's happening for people energetically and socially and system-wise. But I also heard the answer in there to turn my attention within and identify my fear. And I think it suggested to play it out in my head. Well, what would happen if my fear just really came true and came true and came true and came true? And when we do that little exercise with joy, we see that those fear monsters that are built after fear upon fear upon fear upon fear, that usually most of them never manifest anyway, and certainly none of them exactly the way we feared, that they're just paper tigers. There's nothing to them. They're not the thing that there was to look at in the first place. So to look inward at my fear. What did you hear? Oops, you might be muted.
I'm typing what you heard.
Oh, there you go. You're a stenographer. Does anybody else have a comment on what the Ten of Swords brought?
It's actually a response. It's a similar response to the question I asked about how do you find joy in this, and you actually addressed it to here through looking at the fear and then finding joy and using that to answer, to run that scenario of fear through, but with joy.
Right, right. To set the mind on the track or the process of joy, and then regard the fearful thoughts from the joyful mind. And it's just like bringing a light bulb into a dark room. It's all different.
It's a tall order.
It is a really tall order, and even people who practice training their minds for a long, long time, you know, I don't think there's anybody who just gets perfect at this. And all that matters is that I just keep on trying. I fall off the joy wagon like 100 times a day, you know, and just to keep getting back on.
Can I ask Sonia, who's an astrologer, about that process?
I was sort of, I was distracted.
Oh.
Could you please quickly define the process?
The Ten of Swords, or the Pentacle of Swords in her discussion.
I think in other decks, one of its interpretations is imprisonment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and just considering all the you know, confinement going. it's descriptive of the general. I don't know how much it describes your particulars. You know, are you in a place where you know?
Oh, it wasn't directed towards me. It was just directed in general as a
Oh,
societal condition of what to do now. So if it is imprisonment, then what is that? What is the response to imprisonment?
well, you sort of, you know, I mean, it's sort of socially defined, the quarantine confinement, and, you know, whatever. But, you know, we're all like alone together. And, you know, actually, except for the terrible conditions outside, I'm pretty happy. You know, I've been doing things, I've been meeting, I'm pretty old too. I've been doing things I've been, you know, I'll get around to it one of these days. Well, this is kind of one of these days. I'm working on my scenario. And I've got, well, as an astrologer, I've got a compatibility device that it's a graphic that would be, you know, it has Zoom room possibilities. I'm thinking, how do I market it? Kind of thing, because you know there's so much dividing us, but just finding out what the basic, you know, astrological affinities. I use the 6 astrosocial factors in the individual's chart, and they're correlated with the 6 lines of the I Ching, you know, the Chinese hexagrams. So there are 64 possibilities. But these things I look at, whether you're born day or night, and the zodiacal positions of Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Sun and Moon. So those are 6 factors. 6 factors with 2 expressions each is 2 to the 6th factor is 64, and the Chinese trigrams rest on 8 times 8, so, you know, which is also 64. But I did work out a 1-to-1 correlation, so I think, you know, that sounds like compatibility, but there's basically like, out of a crowd of people, you can find, you know, people who you can relate to in various ways, or not relate to.
I really like, Sonia, that, you know, the approach you're taking into it is to find compatibilities. And I think that goes along with what the card is saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you are willing, or if you get contacted by the public for more astrology discussion and readings or whatever, if you can put your contact information in our chat, or tell it Tricia, and she could put it in our chat if you're willing to be contacted.
Oh yeah. In fact, if anybody, you know, if you'd like me to do your chart and then show you what my compatibility device is, you know, you could, you know, email it to me.
Super. Let us know in the chat window how people can do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And thanks for participating today.
Oh, you're welcome. Good fun. Nice to meet all of you.
Nice to meet you all. Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to bring in or share?
That's right.
Well, thank you everybody for coming today. And, you know, we're all making this all up as we go along all the time anyway, and it just feels more like that in quarantine, COVID, social protests times. So I wish everybody well.
Thank you very much, Dana. Thank you all for joining us today. Stay well.
Thank you. And thank you, Tricia and 6018 for hosting the sanctuary sessions.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.